So looking at the first 3 episodes, is it a complete disaster? No, I think people are exaggerating how bad it is. Is it a little bit of a weird zigzag pattern? Yes. And I would like to give this show points for doing a very different kind of episode with episode 3, but they're sort of stuck in a polarity that we have Andor, which has fan service, but it's very light, and this one, which overdoes it, and that is the essence of the problem, that the story is always just too skeletal, and it's just leaning on fan service to pull it through. That said, the episodes were fine. They just weren't very excellent. They never stood out. The Mandalorian come back, essentially, from his long Boba trek, and Manny mixes it up with Bo-Katan, and there's a bit of surprise with episode 3. So essentially, episodes 1 and 2 are him and Bo-Katan going back and forth. They encounter a few obstacles, and she makes herself useful. Episode 3 is a little misleading. The Mandalorian is in it, but he's more of a guest cameo because they shift the emphasis of the story. But overall, again, this is focused on Easter eggs. Were the Easter eggs pleasing? If you're a hardcore fan, yes, you'll enjoy a lot of things. You'll be smirking. But if you're a more intermediate fan, you'll be a little puzzled by so many things that they're putting into the plot line. Episode 1 showed a pretty good balance where the story itself was fine in terms of the Mandalorian culture being shown in more detail. We're catching up on old allies, and the Easter eggs were sprinkled. Did they overdo it? A little bit, but it wasn't too bad. That said, the problem is the stories keep leading up to the Easter eggs, so it's a little frustrating in terms of finding out what the Mandalorian wants. It just keeps getting sidetracked into all these kind of fan service moments that kind of range from being cringy to just being like, okay, that was interesting. Where are we going with this? It's a little bit uneven just at the beginning of the season. It's not as bad as people say it is. However, I would say about a third of episode 1 seemed a little pointless. It's just recapping what happened with Boba. If you missed Boba, it's nice, but if you saw Boba, as I did, it will feel like overkill. However, the other 2/3 of the episode I think were very strong, and I did understand the reasoning why they did certain things. It just felt overdone. And again, this is no spoiler, so I can't give away what happens with episode 2, but I think the way that Bo-Katan is roped back in felt a little forced, especially with Grogu. I mean, Grogu at this point should be pretty powerful, but yet somehow he can't help the Mandalorian too much, so they need Bo-Katan for whatever reason. And I find the way that the Mandalorian just has inconsistent abilities and powers is a little frustrating. That said, there are a lot of things to enjoy beyond Star Wars. A few of the Easter eggs, I think, come from the Dark Tower. Again, I want to be careful. It seemed very close to what you see in the Dark Tower Book 2, but I could be wrong. I just thought the monster they used had very Stephen King vibes, at least in my opinion. So again, good stuff. It went down fine, but there's nothing outstanding in terms of reveals or even betrayals. Like I could see from a mile away, the twist they were doing in episode 3, it just seemed very big red flag, and I guess we're learning that don't trust anyone in the Star Wars universe, at least in this roguish end of the corner. I guess that's a lesson I didn't really gain too much there, but I do think they're setting up slowly how Snoke was created with the sequel trilogy, so I think that was a little fascinating. But overall, uneven episodes, they're fun, but it does feel like a bit like filler, like we're not getting the real story yet, they're just teasing what the real story is. So I'm going to give episode 1 7.5, episode 2 a 7 out of 10, and episode 3 7.25. So the average is very above average from most television, but again, I would say episode 1 is the strongest visually. They showed a lot of impressive things, and that was really outstanding. And the direction did have a bit of energy and charge to it. But as the other episodes come in, it just feels like they're dragging out the story for whatever reason, and we're not even getting what exactly is the Mandalorian up to. I guess they're teasing Thrawn, but we don't really know that for sure. So it does feel like they're just taking their time for no reason, and that's a little frustrating.